Welcome to the Real People, Real Business show, where we're talking with business owners who are in the trenches, everyday people who are working hard and have relevant and inspiring stories that you can relate to. Everyone we speak to is actively building and growing their business and is here to share their experiences, lessons, wisdom, and guidance so you can be inspired to take action towards your own goals. Today, I'm so excited to welcome Aden Nepom. Aden is a professional speaker, executive coach, and social dynamics expert that works with passionate leaders who want to make an impact in their work, teams, and organizations. If you're a leader who is so ready to perform at the very top of your game, you have tuned into the right episode. Welcome to the show, Aden, and thanks so much for taking your time to share your story today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here and have a nice chat.
Yes. And you've just started a podcast, haven't you?
I have. I'm drinking out of my my own swag because I sent this gift to my dad. I'm in his home visiting. But yes, I started the Changed podcast, which is all about exploring how the pivotal moments, those fork in the road moments in our lives, impact things, our perspectives, our experiences, and our choices moving forward. And so, yeah, I have guests come in and tell stories from their lives, and it's really fun and satisfying.
When I saw that you had started it up, I thought it was such a good fit for you. But let's go backwards and just, you can tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are and why that's such a good fit for you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I have been working as a communication skills trainer, consultant, and speaker in terms of workplace dynamics. I've been doing that for about 12 years, maybe 15 years. I'd have to actually sit down with a calculator because that's math in my head is, anyway, that's besides the point. But in addition to that, I'm a professional performer and I have this stage performance background. And sometimes I pull tools from that world, from improvisation and status work and things like that that happen on the stage, and bring those into workplace to help with their dynamics. And so it's been really cool just, to be able to take the show-minded part of me and marry it with the workplace dynamics part of me, not just in my delivery, but now with the podcast, it's also really tapping into all of that.
And so you have traditionally been serving kind of a corporate audience, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And then has that changed over the years, or are you looking to move into a new audience?
Yeah. So for the last more than decade, my audiences have literally been large Fortune 500 companies, sometimes small teams, sometimes conferences. And through the course of this past year and a half, there were a couple of things that I really recognized in what I enjoy doing the most. And one of the things that I really, really enjoy is that one-on-one dive deep into what's really going on. So for example, with my corporate clients, they'll call up and they'll say something vague, like, we need a speaker for a luncheon, or we need team building, something like that. And it sounds specific, and it's not. And so I really enjoyed diving deep with those big requests just to find out what is it that they're actually trying to achieve, why now, why would they reach out to somebody with an improv background specifically for this event? Is it they just want it to be fun and playful, or is it that they've read an article or whatever? And really helping people identify those desired outcomes and then what needs to happen, that design thinking around what needs to happen in order to get there. That's my favorite part. The delivery part, that taps into my showbiz persona, and that's fun. And I love that, but it's really the dive deep design thinking thing that's appealing. So I got really interested in building more on reaching out to one-on-one development of people. And that was already happening with some of my corporate clients. Like, they would have an event and then some people would want to dive a little deeper. And so I was already doing some of that. But I really wanted to develop that over the course of this year and a half. And so now I'm exploring really focusing on that one-on-one service where we're just going to sort of, it's like, I'm a facilitator at heart. It's like one-on-one facilitation. It's like that kind of thought partnership where it sounds so obvious when somebody else points it out to you that you just said it, but when you said it, went over your head. Like that's a thing I like to provide to people.
Yeah, and it happens a lot. How does that that ideal customer kind of change then? I mean, are these people who are
Mhm.
still working in corporate, or are these people who may be entrepreneurs or self-starters or celebrities or something like that?
Right. I haven't worked with any celebrities, though I've had a few well-known actors and writers on my podcast. So I certainly would be open to that if some celebrities like that girl, that's the one for me. Um, says the middle-aged woman calling herself a girl. But but yeah, the people that I enjoy working with the most are, it's in a professional capacity. It's people who are climbing towards um, they're driven, they have that leadership quality. So executive coaching is excellent, but I'm not limiting myself to just that because there's so much leadership quality and so many people. So a couple of the people I've recently worked with, they actually were just in job transition, which was surprising to me that they were like, you're the one to help me with this. And because, it's like team dynamics happening in between. That's an interesting, what's going on there. And yeah, I guess what's happening is I'm exploring where the ideal client really lives for me. I think that's the honest answer, is I'm still exploring that.
So let's go back a little bit into the history of Art of Change, right? Because
Okay.
this was a business you almost inherited, right? Not
Mhm.
necessarily inherited fully, but this was a family business. So
Yes,
that's an interesting way in, right? And I would love to hear more about what that experience has been like and the process of
totally.
you sort of making it your own.
The cool thing about me being here in this environment and answering that question is that, this is my father's home, and the Art of Change was founded by my father. I mean, I could probably call him and have him come running down. He'd be like, I'll tell you all about it, but let's not. My dad is a naturopathic physician, and he discovered through the course of his training, and I don't know if you know this, but NDs from accredited schools they go through 2 years more of practicum hours than a standard MD. So they're really learned, and they really get to be in the clinic for a couple of extra years and discover things. And what he discovered early on was that a lot of dis-ease in the body, disease, I'm clever, comes from stress. And this is all well known now, but you have to dial it back to the 70s and 80s, right? When the stuff was a little less known. And so stress in the body, which often stems from the inability to communicate effectively with each other. And his thought years later, when he was no longer in practice as an MD, and he already had a speaking career through another company, he gave a lot of deep thought to this. And his goal in creating Art of Change was to help people in the workplace have healthier dynamics through the way they communicate with each other, the way they resolve conflict, the way they influence each other. One of the largest causes of stress in America and in workers all over the world could be alleviated by simply helping people navigate the pain of change with great communication. And so are the founding principles of Art of Change. And I came up with these skills through other pathways. I worked at other companies. I really, I did all this stuff on my own. And I think what was really exciting was the moment when, we had talked like long-term about him retiring and me taking over Art of Change. We had a sort of long-term plan for what that was going to be. And at some point, I wish I could remember what year this was now. I think it was, I don't remember, but he retired early. He was like, you know what? You got this. Here you go. I'm retiring. Goodbye. I'm done. I'm out. And he handed everything to me. And I, to be honest, I was like, I'm not worthy and I don't know how to do this. And there was a lot of like backpedaling, and I just kept working for these other companies for several years, and I let Art of Change sit on the back burner. And right before the pandemic, I started doing deep thinking about what does Art of Change mean for me? How do I take this company and really incorporate everything that I know and love about great communication and team dynamics, which comes from the principles of improvisation? How do I really understand what it means to change? How do I help people navigate that? And I began the process of really taking ownership of Art of Change. And towards the end of 2019, for the first time, like really owning it. I was like, new logo, new this. I'm really like, this is mine now. And all along the way, my dad was cheerleading. He was 100% supportive. And this allowed me to create trainings that were specific to my content that really pulled from his amazing tool set, but it was brought into the like modern day current experience. And so yeah, I've got these great programs. I've got Reason in an Outraged World, and I have Say It Like You Mean It for people who need to build confidence and competence in their public speaking. I have all these really great programs that I was able to develop as a result of finally stepping into that. And additionally, I realized that for some people, it's enough to attend a talk, to go to a training and take some notes and get inspired. And for other people, they really do need a thought partner. And so I developed that side of the business as well. So that's kind of a long story, but that's how I've come to step into the role. And it's been an amazing. He's still alive and vibrant, and to have him as a consulting entity in a business that I feel 100% invested, involved, and identified with has been an amazing thing. The thing that was difficult that I wasn't able to do was to try and be my dad. And I think to try and like just step in and be the same logo, same jokes, same slides for programming, same whatever. That isn't me. I have my own gifts, my listening style. It has its own qualities to it. And the way that I dive in with people it has a different vibe. And I realize that all of those things are gifts as opposed to like, oh, I'm not him and I can't do and whatever. It's like, I really had to get my mindset straight. So that's been kind of the journey with Art of Change. And I'm still connected to these other companies, which is also great. And I highly recommend, if you're an entrepreneur, like you don't have to spread yourself thin to diversify. What happens, I think, when you do that is eventually the right thing becomes really apparent. I'm kind of woo-woo like that. I think the universe will send you signals when you're on the right path.
When I met you last year, was it last year?
Yeah, I think it was, I think we had a conversation in January. I remember I was in a hotel because I was delivering a team building, or no, I was delivering like a breakout at a conference. And I remember I was in a hotel and I don't remember what city. This is when I was traveling on the road all the time doing work for this other company.
So,
Yeah.
but I remember when we first met, you'd had this experience of building your dad's company, and you were in this place where you were thinking that there's actually might be something else that you want to build for yourself. And so can you talk me through kind of like how that thought process went and how you landed where you are now with this kind of harmonized approach?
Yeah, so one of the things that I did was I invested in somebody else's expertise to help me get really clear. And that was a program called Make It Work Online. And there were things that I got from that program that were really, really helpful along the way. And so that was part of what happened for me, was I just needed somebody to help facilitate my thinking the way I help other people facilitate theirs. And you were part of that process. But what happened as a result of making that investment, just really like committing and doing that, what happened as a result of that is I started really thinking about how do I narrow down all of the things that I have to offer to get really focused on what it is that will be of greatest service. And that's a really challenging thing to think about. And I think I'll always be thinking about that. But there came a moment at which this back burner project started really taking the foreground. It was part of this movement that started at the end of 2019 for me, of really like defining what it is that I want to be doing. Where do I want to be spending my energy? And this podcast was a big part of that, because as I was thinking about what does it mean to navigate change, the name of the company I have inherited is Art of Change. But the focus on delivery is communication skills, collaboration skills, influence, all of these things that certainly are helpful when you're navigating change. But like, what are we even talking about? And moreover, like, it's a word. Change is such a like beefy word filled with all this meaning, and we just throw it around as if it means like literally everything all of the time. Like, I go change my socks and then I go change my career. It's like the same word. So I was really curious, like, what does that mean to people when they say that? And I'm a big believer. I've done a lot of work bringing values to action for companies using storytelling. Storytelling is a great way to define terms. And so I started this Changed podcast. It was part of this like definition, just so I could hear these stories from people to help me understand, what are we talking about when we're talking about change? When we need tools to help us navigate change, what is it that we actually need? And originally I was just going to talk with people and record stories, but I realized that by doing that, I have makings of a podcast. And if I was curious about it, probably somebody else was curious about it. So I started this podcast. And the more I was focusing on the podcast and getting really, really curious, the more things started shifting and changing for me and kind of like sliding into place. So before, the content that I was delivering was like, it was stuff that I was familiar with, tools that I was familiar with that are helpful, but the frame for delivering them wasn't really in place. And now I feel like I'm very clear about why people would need to have influence when they're navigating change, because it's going to depend on what change we're talking about, but why people would need to be able to collaborate effectively with people, or to navigate difficult behavior in the people they work with, or any of those skills, why that matters when we're navigating change, and what the other factors are that are involved. So mindset has always been a big piece, but it was sort of like, I was coming at it from this perspective as an improviser. When we walk on stage, to get your mindset right, you just sort of like pick a mantra, like, and this is a great tool in and of itself, which is you just pick a mantra. You're like, instead of going on stage and being like, I don't know what's going to happen, but it could totally suck. You're going to go on stage with I don't know what's going to happen, but it could be amazing. Just opening the door to that possibility. But since diving deeper into what it means for people to navigate change, when I think about picking a mantra, there's now like, I can now take people through a little bit more of a process for what does that mean? If we're going to pick a mantra to repeat in our head to help us navigate a moment, what's needed? Where do we need to go with that? What's going to be of greatest service for that particular moment? The other thing that's been really cool is, I think this year and a half has really shown me the depth of human emotion and experience in a way. I mean, I think I sound like a robot when I say that, but or like an alien. I'm like, must understand human emotion and experience. But but I feel like it's really shown me like what an important role that plays for people. I recently worked with a client who it was navigating, well, what they said they wanted, and this is, I find this often happens. People think they want one thing, and then it turns out they need something else. So what they said they wanted was they wanted to get a new job. They didn't want to end up in the rut that they had been in before. So one of the things that I do is I do a little micro coaching experience, and I'm just getting unstuck on a single issue. And when they showed up with that request, it was like real obvious, real fast. They hadn't healed their own heartbreak from losing a job they hated. And so rather than try and be like, okay, here are your clear next steps to go into the, it's like, we can do all that and we will, but what you need is to grieve, to lick your wounds, to grieve your losses, to take some time to journal and learn from the experience, and to really understand what you gained through being in a job that you hated and what you gained from losing that job and what you'll miss, because even if you hated it, there's always like, sometimes we love to hate stuff, and recognizing that can be really valuable. It's like, I'm going to miss that nasty coffee that reminded me, like it's like you're just surprised at the things that you're going to miss, So I feel like this year has given me that depth of understanding, the ability to really meet people where they are in a new way for me, which doesn't undermine the important work that I was doing before. That was really, I mean, people gave me great feedback then, and people are giving me great feedback now. But we've all been through something, and it's interesting to see how that's showing up in the landscape of other experiences in context.
In my career, I worked for a long time as a change manager in the IT sector. And
oh boy,
the emotion and the creativity inside the IT sector is not like the highest, right? And so for me, this experience of change,
mm-hmm.
I always wanted it to be a real technical thing. I wanted it to be something we could apply a framework to and move people through. But what I discovered after working for a number of years as a change management professional, so to speak, was that it all boils down to people, emotions, and experiences, right? Like all this, I can give you this entire pro-sci framework and fill in all the blanks and give you a nice little roadmap. But if this person over here is still pissed off about the fact that you rolled out a new HR system to their mine up in like Logan Lake, BC, and they're going to fight you every step of the way, no matter what it is you're asking for, that's a change management problem. And I think what I always loved about talking to you was this new creative approach and the emotion behind the work that you do. Can you give us a little bit of background? Like I want to step even further back. So
sure,
you kind of came into your story where you're like, oh, I got to take over my dad's company. But there's this there's this whole other piece of your story. I mean, you were and are in show business. You are an actor. Can you tell us, like, how does the show business part weave into this story, and what had you done before you took over Art of Change?
Oh, great. Yeah, I love telling this story. So, and actually, I'll try and tell a shorter version because I gave a TED Talk that is this story, and you can go watch that and get the full gist of it. But I've been doing stage performance and improv and things like that my whole life. Like I started on stage at the age of 6. I started improv training and acting training at the age of 12. By the end of high school, I was teaching improv and like running drama at summer camps and things like that. So very deeply ingrained in me. And I was also told many times by many people, not just my own family, but like literally everywhere you go, they tell you can't really make it as a performer. It's just like starving actress, like that's, if you want to do that, you're going to be waiting tables a lot. That's what I was always told. And I believed that. So I floundered for many years trying to figure out what I was supposed to be, including, I have a degree in medieval European history. I took the LSAT a couple of times. I thought I was going to go to law school. I fronted an all-girl glam rock band. I've just done a lot of things. Yeah.
Wait, what was your band?
Yeah. Oh, the Platforms. The Platforms. We had we had a couple of really great songs. I was not a songwriter at the time. And there were songs that were written by the previous singer of that band, songs called like Hot Little Ride and Walk of Shame. It was really fun.
That's amazing.
And I had hair your color, and it wasn't curly because it couldn't curl when I had bleached all the color out of it. But it was a wild time. And then from there, I got involved in doing improvised musicals, and I was like, songwriting is for chumps. Doing a rough draft live in front of an audience, that's where it's at. So I was doing all these things and teaching improv classes, and all of it was hobby. And also, like a lot of the things that I were doing were because I thought I was supposed to, or somebody suggested it. Like I got into rock climbing because somebody was like, you should do rock climbing. I was like, okay, I'll do rock climbing. Somebody was like, you should go to law school. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try and go to law school. So a lot of the decisions that I were making were like that. It was other people's ideas. I didn't have, because I wasn't clear about what I wanted to be doing at all. So other people's ideas were good enough for me. And I got a job as a writer at a software company, and I was making a salary, and I had a housekeeper, and life was really good. And I thought, now I've made it because I have a job and I have a salary. And so this is success. And all this stuff that I was doing that was bringing me such joy, that's just hobby, because you work so that you can live. You don't live to work, right? And but I was miserable at that job. Like, they just kept if you've ever worked in software or really in any corporate setting, project managers' jobs are to get on you about decreasing the amount of time you invest in anything and making sure your deliverables show up on time. And then if you succeed at getting those deliverables in on time, then they're going to just decrease the amount of time to have to deliver things. So by the time I was laid off from that job, I had already been trying to figure out what I was supposed to do with my life, because that wasn't it. And I was laid off. I survived 9 rounds of layoff before my department got hit. That company was constantly hemorrhaging personnel. And it was a shame, because the amount of talent under that roof, and I'm sure this is true in literally every company. It's like the talent under these rooftops are just amazingly creative. Ingenuity is like at its peak in these places. And we're just head count. So I was laid off from that job, and I still didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. And it just got worse from there. I just was like, well, maybe I'm supposed to fall back on being an actor. And I got a job as a professional performer. At a really amazing show called Esther's Follies. If you're ever in Austin, Texas, definitely check it out. But I got laid off from that job too, because they had another curly-headed cast member who could do Bette Midler impressions, and what do they need 2 of those for? So it just was like, that was my, this will never be your career, but fallback skill set. And then that wasn't it. And I just fell into a total funk because I was lost. And I was in a really bad spot emotionally. I was married to my first husband at that time, and he had a salary that could support us, but he never imagined himself in a marriage where he was the provider. So it caused strain. And my dad came for a visit, and he was like, okay, you're in your 30s now, and I've been waiting for you to figure this out. And seems like you're really not figuring it out. He was like, you just keep doing the safe thing. And if you want great rewards in this life, you have to take risks. And I was like, what are you even talking about? I was just, on this vaudeville style show for a year. That's risky. I would go rock climbing. That's risky. And he was like, no. Those things aren't risky for you. He's like, pursuing success, having a career that you're passionate about, those things are risky for you. And we talked about what I was afraid of, and I was afraid of success. I wasn't afraid of failure. That's why I could do all those other things, because if I failed, it was no big deal. You're rock climbing, you got a safety harness, you fall off the rock, you just get back up. It's not a big deal. On stage, I knew that my skill set on stage was so there for me, like consistent, like I can call on these skills, that it didn't matter if one joke fell. I got another joke. They're going to enjoy that. My singing voice is consistent enough. And when I'm improvising, the audiences are like, I don't know how you do that. It's a magic trick. So yeah, it's not risky. And he was right. And so identifying that I was afraid of success was a really interesting moment for me. And that happened in 2012. And so we talked about like this intersection, people always talk about like, do what you're passionate about. I had no idea what that meant either. That was a confusing idea for me. And so he was like, well, he's like, you do a lot of improv. What do you like doing about that? What's in that for you? And I said, well, it's this joy filled experience that's shared with the audience. So like I like seeing, and the same is true for teaching improv classes and for making up musicals and for running a band. It's this experience where you see people's eyes literally light up. It's me delivering a gift of joy and making people's lives better in that moment. And it's effortless because it's just pursuing this moment of happiness, of joy, of reward, of, you know. And he was like, well, you should probably just do more of that. And I was like, improv? He's like, lighting people up. It sounds like what you want to do is to light people up. Do that. And I was like, I don't know what that means. But having overcome the initial parts of that fear of success, like now I know that's a thing I need to come to terms with, and pursuing more joy, more fulfillment, lighting more people up. That was the thing I was like, well, I know in the immediate sense, I can explore more of that just through doing improv, but I'll just start there. I'll just do more. And eventually that led me to doing corporate team building just as an improv thing. So like coming in, the joke inside the improv community is we call it soundball for suits, but it's literally bringing improv games into the workplace. And the idea is by playing these improv games, the teams that play these games together function better because they discover things in the process of doing something that's different from their day to day. And I believe wholeheartedly in that approach. I'm not doing that specific thing a lot these days, but I still take those principles into what I do. And it just kind of, it was one of those things where the universe just kept being like, yeah, okay, if you're doing more of that, do some of this too. But not in the way where it was before, where it was somebody suggesting something. It was like inspiration popping in here and then taking action and the universe being like, good job, that's working. So I just started doing more of it. And it came from that place of realizing that what was holding me back was me, and realizing that I really was passionate about bringing joy to people and having light bulbs show up in people's thinking. And so I've been able to take that and grow those kernels to where I am now. And yeah, that's the long version of the story I told in my TED Talk. No, I'm kidding. I think that's still a shorter version of the TED Talk.
It's brilliant. And I think that there's so much in there. You know, as you were talking, I was just like, oh, that's the gold right there, right? And so
Yeah.
at some point in time, you and Dad kind of make this agreement, and you come to the realization that that's a vehicle for you to start bringing that joy, right? And would you say that at this point in time, the way that you're working with your clients, like have you fulfilled that?
Oh, absolutely. What's really cool is my definition of what brings people joy has expanded. So I've come to this realization that fulfillment is also a version of joy. It's not always about laughter, though I bring a ton of playfulness to what I do. But I had a lot of fear of bringing my thoughtful, heart-centered self to the table and having it like I felt like I needed it to just be jokes all the time for a long time. And yeah, and being able to expand my definition of joy has been a very fulfilling experience for me. And what it allows me to do is, you know, it allows me to, like I said, I was tapped into that emotional side a lot more in my work over this last year and a half, and that's been incredibly rewarding. And my clients are having different kinds of success with you know, the things that I'm doing, and it's really nice to watch. Really nice to watch. You know, I've always talked about getting uncomfortable or getting comfortable with being uncomfortable as a way of exploring where you might build more joy. But it's like I've expanded what that means. It's before it was just like, we're going to play this game and it's going to be weird. But now it's like, we're going to have a conversation and we're going to get into some stuff that you haven't necessarily thought about. And it can be uncomfortable for people to just, for example, this recent example I shared before, asking this person to embark on a journaling experience to really process what it meant to leave this job. This client's initial reaction was like, I don't want to do that. You know, they were like, I don't want to grieve the loss of this job because grieving is about crying. And I don't want to do that. They don't deserve tears from me. And I just was confident 100 and bajillion percent, again, math's not my thing, that, that this was going to be helpful, that for this person to really do work that fulfills them, they had to do this. They just had to. And they came back and I explained the value of it. You know, I was like, look, I get it. You don't want to cry. I totally understand that. I understand how it feels to not want to give another minute of thought to something that you have left in the past. I understand how that feels. And at the same time, this whole conversation that was supposed to be about the future was about this past experience. So you're already doing it. So let's do it all the way so that you can actually leave it in the past and no longer devote any energy. Like, let's really just go there. And so I think, and then they came back after that and it was like, I just had this huge epiphany about what's been holding me back. And so I think, you know, it's been such a gift to be able to expand that definition of joy to understanding that sometimes it's baby steps to get to the big payoff. And sometimes it really is just playing sound ball.
Do you think that your experience doing improv and being in the showbiz profession, or
Mhm.
is I had my scholarships were all in theater, so I had a little bit of background
Mm,
in theater, not certainly to your extent, but I know that being a good actor has a lot to do with being able to connect with and see and read what's going on with the audience.
yeah.
So, do you think that that experience has helped you in terms of coaching and helping people really get to the bottom of what it is they need to process?
Absolutely. Absolutely. My skill set is in facilitation. And, you know, actually, I learned facilitation skills very early as well. I was part of an experience when I was in high school called Camp Odyssey. It was specific to Oregon, and it was about, um, they were trying to combat basically Oregon's history of neo-Nazism by bringing teenagers together to confront issues of race, ability, gender, and all this stuff. And I went as an attendee, and they invited me back as a facilitator, and they trained me to facilitate. So I grew those skills in conjunction with my performance skills, but there there was a moment where it all kind of came together, this like see your audience moment on stage for me. So ironically, though, I had this facilitation skill set that I was growing and I had this performance skill set that I was growing, I would get on stage like for years, and the audience, the minute the lights came on, the audience wasn't even there. So it was kind of like I was performing in a vacuum. And after the show, audience members would tell me that I was funny or whatever, that they liked the show, and that was great. But in the moment, I couldn't hear the audience. And then there was this one show, and the lights came on, and the show started, and everything was working the same way. And then something happened, and I heard the audience laugh. And it was like seeing the Matrix, you know, it was like, wow, you know, like I could really, it became a participatory experience in that moment. And that was when I started teaching improv more regularly. And then that was where the skill set really came together. So as an improv theater skills teacher, I was able to see things from all these angles, like the audience experience and your experience inside the scene. And I could help people see like, what does your scene partner need? And all of those things really, really help. So yes, absolutely. Those skill sets have been well honed, but in conjunction. And when I work one-on-one with people, it's really similar to when I'm facilitating a large group event. But instead of having to split my attention around like, what does this audience need right now? They need an energy shift, or they need more practice in this skill. Now it's with one person. It's like I get to focus my laser beams right here and be like, what's needed right now in this moment? And I do think that having that skill set of seeing your audience first is critical, but it's not just critical as a facilitator, and it's not just critical as a coach. It is fundamental to being a great leader. Fundamental. You cannot lead well without being able to see what is needed from your people. They're your audience, as well as your board members of your organization, as well as the customers. They're your audience, and they have different needs and issues. And if you want it to be really successful to deliver this to them, then you need to be able to really see your audience's needs and issues. So a lot of that corporate work that I have spent time doing is about helping people see their audience's needs and issues in the moment.
And I would imagine in a corporate environment and with some of those folks that you're dealing with, that's a real new concept, right?
It really can be, especially when you're defining terms and you're like, audience can be thousands and also audience can be one. That can be really revelatory, because what most people do is they think about, so take, for example, a pitch. So let's say as a project leader, you need to pitch to your team leader to try and get budget approved so that you can move this project forward. What most people worry about is their slide deck, their math, how much content they can fit on the slide, because they need to get a lot of information across. And then they worry about themselves once they're in the room trying to get this approval. They really worry about themselves. They're like, I can't breathe, or I sound stupid, or they're going to ask me a question I don't know the answer to, or whatever their inner chatter is. And it's typically not great. And so the cool thing about focusing on your audience is the minute you do that, all that other stuff just like goes away. The minute you're like, what do they need right now? It eases, your presentation becomes better. It's more targeted. That it doesn't matter if they ask you a question you don't have the answer to, because you can hear that what they need right now is that they have that question, they need that attended to. And not knowing the answer doesn't mean that you can't attend to that, right? It's just as easy to say, that's a great question. I don't have the answer to that question, but I can get the answer to that question and come back. And then their question is attended to, right? So it takes it off of like, oh my God, if I don't answer this question, I'm going to look really dumb. So, it's like, it's really, it's a quick shift. It's like, once you introduce this idea to people, it's kind of like that moment for me on stage where it's like, oh, I can hear the audience laughing for the first time. That's a gift that then my audiences get to have, my audience of one or many.
I love that. I just love everything that you say. And
Oh.
I think that it's really relevant for anyone who's running a services organization. Like, even if you're a consultant or a freelancer and you've got clients, having that perspective, I mean, that just shifted a lot for me as well. Thinking about maybe I do it intuitively or maybe I don't, but thinking about it from that perspective, I think is really could change things, right? Could change things a lot when you're working with an individual or a group. I could listen to you talk forever, but let's talk just quickly some business stuff.
Sure.
So you're running Art of Change now. You are developing out your services. Dad has retired, correct?
Yeah, he's fully retired.
Handed off.
He spends his days playing electric guitar and watching sci-fi. It's
Oh my God,
amazing.
I
Yeah, you can't see it because of where I've set it up, but like behind you, in my experience, there's just a wall of Star Trek stuff. It's amazing.
Oh, I want to meet your dad. Your dad sounds amazing. Is he in a glam rock band?
He's not in a band at the moment, but he's been in many bands over the years. And he put out an album, with his friends when I was in high school, and I thought it was the stupidest thing in the world. And I went back and listened, like, dumb, my dad is dumb at electric guitar. And then I went back and listened to it, decades later, and I was like, these songs are really good. And from his perspective, he's like, I hadn't even really learned to play guitar yet.
I love it. I love it. Okay, let's talk business for just a second. So you've got this business, You're running this business. How are you connecting with your clients? How are you finding your clients, and how are they finding you?
So there's a few things that I'm doing. I have a mailing list, some of which was inherited when I inherited the business, and some of which are new subscribers. I have the podcast, which also has its own mailing list. There's some crossover and there's also not, but it still all counts. And I also have a Facebook group that now has, it's a small group. It has about 170, 175 members, but it's an active, vibrant group. And none of those things in and of themselves are like a direct sales approach. Like I'm not, for any of that to be a direct sales approach, I'd need to be like reaching out over Messenger, calling people and being like, would you be interested in these services? But I have to be honest with you that when people reach out to me in that way, I'm very closed off. And so, so I don't do it. I have a old friend who's become a health coach, and I feel like we never get to have conversations anymore because it's always a pitch about her services. And I think that's unfortunate. So I don't do that. Instead, I'm just out there inspiring thinking, asking interesting questions, seeing my audience's needs and issues, and occasionally reminding them what it is that I do and that I'm here. And so what that means is I equate it to a really fancy version of word of mouth. It's like, it's fancy word of mouth. And in the speaking industry and in the training industry, word of mouth is basically your bread and butter. Anything that you have in terms of a mailing list is about providing value so that people don't forget about you. And then you can remind them that you provide a certain service, but it's pretty rare that somebody directly from a mailing list, sometimes that happens. They're like, oh, I forgot about you and I need you for an event. But more likely they see that and they're like, oh, my friend was looking for something, and they send them to you. So it's all, to me, all of that is just fancy word of mouth fodder. And that's basically where I've been investing my energy. I have occasionally entertained the idea of doing cold outreach, and I just am not there. It's just,
It doesn't sound like you need to, right?
right.
Yeah. And I think that's a really important thing that I, if I will die happy if I have helped all of my clients, listeners, audience understand that you do not have to do all the things that don't make you feel good. If you like cold outreach and you like direct selling, do it. That's fine. There are certain industries and markets and products that where that is great. Like that works perfectly and there's a proven model. Totally. For the most part, the people that I know and work with bristle at the idea of it and don't want to do it, and it doesn't work anyway for them, so that's fine. But all of the, like, we kill ourselves with shoulds, right? And to me, should always means I wish I didn't have to. And if there is a should, if there's like a, oh god, I got to be on social media and I got to do all this, it's a great candidate to just say no. But we all, like, we
totally.
And I think, like, we speak almost apologetically about the fact that we're not doing all these things, but we shouldn't, because what it says to me is that you've just figured it out. Like you've learned, you know what works. Like I do no marketing. I really do. And like I just do the things that I enjoy doing, and I have fun and I talk to people and that sort of thing. But nothing is really that intentional. And that has not been the case in the past. I have really forced myself to try and do things, and my business doesn't change. So I'm just going to keep doing what's fun.
I had this epiphany probably a few months ago, just to be really transparent and really confess where I've been on this journey. It's like a few months ago, I had this epiphany that I was running myself ragged. And the irony is, everyone I talked to on the podcast at that time, every single interviewee was like, you really got to take breaks. You really got to take care of yourself. This was my big realization. I'm like, yeah, universe, I can't right now because I'm too busy trying to wear 1,000 hats. And I just thought back to when I first started out in this work. It was like I had a magic superpower. All I would do was sit down at my computer for like an hour or two and the phone would ring. And that was the level of work that was needed. And here I'm like really, really pushing, and the phone's not ringing. And so I had this epiphany that I already knew and was able to tell other people about their own stuff. But when it came to mine, it was you put out that desperate energy and people notice and they are like, oh, wow, they're really pushing. And it's it's the equivalent to that friend of mine who I can't have a conversation with because she's always pitching her services. So I was like, okay, time to back off. And what I had been pitching at that time, ironically, was a free workshop that was getting like 12 enrollees. And let me be clear, you get 12 people, you get one person, you show up 100% for those people regardless. You don't go like, oh, I was supposed to get 100 people or whatever. Like you show up. That's really critical. But it's also feedback that what you're putting out there isn't appealing to the masses, that it's like, and it could be different things. It's maybe you adjust like I was like, oh, okay, I don't think free is appealing to people actually. I think I don't think it is. Like here, I'm just trying to be of service. I'm really passionate about this work. I just want people to have it. And what I think when people see free, people who take advantage of free stuff typically just want free stuff, and people who otherwise want value feel like value comes at a price.
You're absolutely right. I ran an experiment at the start of this year where I was like, I'm going to take one last shot at doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing. And I want to finally, I want to run this like an experiment. And I want to finally prove to myself that I don't need to put all this effort
Mhm.
in to do all these things that are just like draining me. And I had a free Facebook group, and
Mhm.
I really put a lot of effort into running these challenges. And I said, I'm going to do 3. I'm going to do 1 per month. I'm going to do these 3
Mhm.
challenges. They're going to be great. I'm going to show up every single day, 30 days on
Mhm.
video. I'm going to give worksheets, and they're beautifully designed and everything like that. And I am just going to show the heck up, and I'm going to see what it does to my business. Do you know what it did?
Nothing.
Nothing. And other than make me resentful, because the people who came for the free stuff are the most entitled people.
Oh, it's amazing. It's so
Where is
consistent.
this? Where is that? Where's this download that you said you're going to be?
Yeah.
Why are you not on video today? Like, my clients who pay me a lot of money
Mhm.
do not give me that energy. And that was the final experiment I needed to
Yeah.
just say, that's it. No more free stuff.
Yeah, I think what I like the most about the Facebook group that I have is it's a free Facebook group because it's not I'm not delivering content in that Facebook group. I'm building a community there, people who listen to the Change podcast, people who are philosophical, people who want to be resources for each other. I'm a facilitator. I'm facilitating community, and that feels effortless. And the exciting thing is like I can just schedule some automatic posts that invite them to share stuff with each other, and I don't have to spend a ton of time in there. I do occasionally go live in that group because I have thoughts that stay with me after I post an episode, and I want to share those thoughts. And I didn't have a place to put those before. And
Right.
so now I just go live so I have a place to put those. And honestly, I don't know how many people are really watching them, and I kind of don't care. That's my own little selfish piece. The show, when I put the show together and I put that out, I'm thinking about my audience's needs and issues. But this little piece where I go live, that's like
Yep.
it's me polishing a skill set I feel weird about, and it's me getting thoughts out that I don't have anywhere else to put. So that's for me, and it feels effortless because of that. And I've been thinking about like, there will be times when I'll put in there like, I have this thing that's happening. If you know anybody who would benefit from that, let them know. But I haven't really thought about the timing of that yet. And until I'm really clear about how that fits into the community, I'm just not worrying about it. The other thing that I did remember what the other thing was, the other thing that I realized through the course of this year is there is a piece that relies on your economic circumstances. So and it's just kind of a weird thing. Kendrick Shope tells a story about like she had to go get another job so she could free up her mental capacity to pursue her side hustle and make that her real career. And there's some truth to that. You do, I think, when you embark as an entrepreneur in a services-based role, there has to be that thing that frees you up to just be of service. You need to be able to be in that economic position. So if you need to, for me, I'm in a place where I had enough income from the other streams of work and from my husband's, I was able to just focus on the podcast when I needed to dial back my efforts. Not everyone is in that position, and I'm really, really cognizant of that. So I think, cut yourself some slack. If you are starting out as an entrepreneur, as a service-based provider, even a product-based provider, whatever it is that you're doing, make sure that you have your bases covered so that you're not coming off in that, like, I got to get this, I got to get that cash, because people, for whatever reason, when people are like, oh, they need this, then I'm out. It's like, it could be the most beautiful piece of jewelry, but if people get a sniff, a whiff of your desperation to sell it, they're like, but I'll see if I can find out from another designer. It's like, it's just a crazy thing that seems to be true. So get yourself into a position, whatever it takes, to cut yourself the slack needed to just be present enough to do your thing, even if it means dialing back your efforts to an hour a week. I mean, when I first started out, literally, I'd spend 2 hours at the computer a couple times a week, and the phone would ring. And it's because the energy was like, I'm just going to see what happens. It was experimental. It was curiosity. It wasn't desperate need. It wasn't, I have to make this work. That energy just doesn't work. So
we see it a lot with people who are just starting out, that they're like,
yeah,
they go into their marketing efforts with this anxiety that every single thing they do has to have a measurable outcome.
mm-hmm.
And what I've learned is that we're just filling buckets, right? We're just like, it's like a bank account, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you take that pressure off of any of your marketing activities and realize that they're just like you being you, and every bit helps, but you have to let go of the fact that how it's helping, then things get in flow, right? And they start being really effective. And it's true that, like, that anxious energy of like, oh, I have to convert this. People pick up on that. They'll hear it, right?
Yeah. In a way, it's, so like I kind of dropped this term status work earlier. In a way, it's a kind of status work. So in the theater and improvisation world, what we talk about when we are saying status work are characteristics that convey high status or a low status. And there are benefits and drawbacks to both behavior sets. For example, it's considered kind of like low status to kind of talk really fast and smile a lot, and play with your hair and whatever, but we perceive that as flirting, and it's charming and endearing. It's not, there's actually nothing bad about it unless it's the only thing that you ever do. Having long sentences and not worrying about where the end is and sort of like generously giving your knowledge, that's a very high status place. And there's lots of levels in between. But that eager to please attitude is different. That falls into that lower status category. It's different than that. If you want me to be of service here, I can do that for you. That's like a gift. If you want it, it's here. It's a gift without attachment. That's a very high status place to be. That sort of generous giving versus giving so that people will approve, which is that very sort of low status perspective. And like I said, there's benefits and drawbacks to both, but when it comes to a marketing effort, it feels to me like coming from that benevolent gift place, like, don't put out freebies unless it feels good to you to put out freebies. That's what I think.
And you expect nothing in return.
Yeah, they're freebies. They're free.
Yeah,
they're freebies.
Like, take it. Just go and take it. Don't come back.
Please have this.
Yeah.
And if it's great for you, tell other people about it and give it to them. So if you're putting out freebies with the expectation that people are going to download your freebie or enroll in your free course and then they're going to come back for your help, that I think the chances are more likely that they won't. So put that freebie out because it feels great to you to put it out, and it's something you really just want people to have. That's what I think.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, we are already over time, but I just love talking to you. What's next?
Honestly, I'm just gonna keep doing what I feel lights me up and lights the audience up. I'm just in this place of pursuing more joy, and expanding what that means. I am in the middle of my second season of the Changed podcast, which is available everywhere you listen to podcasts. And just really loving the conversations that are coming from that. And I think I'm just gonna keep following what the signals that show up seem to be suggesting, and I know that's very woo, but I think when something's working, just keep doing what's working, do more of that, explore more of that, and um, that's what I plan to do.
I love your alignment with this definition and expansion of joy, which
Mm,
I think could come off sounding very ethereal, but I think when
yeah,
I listen to you talk about it, it's so real and grounded, and I think it's just so important, and I love that. So keep
thank
expanding,
you.
keep expanding your
Yeah. I mean, there's a big piece of joy for me right now, which is about reasonableness, which is kind of a charged word for people, but helping people communicate with each other in a way that taps into higher reasoning and curiosity. That's a very joyful place for me right now. So there'll probably be some things in
I
that
love it.
arena as well.
I love it, and I can't wait to see where you go. Um, can you thank you so much for taking the time to chat, Dave. Can you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes. Well, the easiest thing to do is probably to, if you're on Facebook, is to join that Facebook group because it's honestly, I think it's a fun and rewarding place to hang out. And then I'm there and it's easy. So that's it's called Change Hub. So facebook.com/groups/Change Hub. You'll have to ask to join. If you're not on Facebook, you can find me at artofchange.com. There's a contact form there. Or of course, you can listen to the Changed podcast.
And we'll put links to everything. And I'm going to track down old videos of your glam rock band as well and put those in
I
there.
can send you links if you want.
And your TED Talk. So we're going to put all the things. This has been such an incredible conversation. I think there are just so many nuggets that our listeners can pull out. And I just really appreciate you taking the time to come and talk to us today. We're going to wrap up the episode. Such a great conversation. Go check out Aden. Go check out all the things that she has to offer and all of her wisdom, and go and get to know her. I'm in that Facebook group. I see what's going on there. It is such a pure and just like fully engaged group that is only about a bunch of curious, smart people together being curious and smart. So awesome. We're going to wrap this episode. I would love for you to join us for our next episode where we're going to be speaking to Mira Kotan. Mira is a decorated email marketing professional. She's a blogger, 3 times Amazon bestselling author. If you are looking to confidently enter the digital space of email marketing, product launching, and blog development, come join us for the next episode. And thank you again for being here. If you have enjoyed today's content, I would love for you to give us a review on whatever platform you're on. This helps us share these stories with an even bigger audience. And until next time, keep building, keep dreaming, and keep being real.